Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Superfluid Sanctuary. I'm your host, Professor C, and I'll be taking us through another A&P study session. Today, specifically, we'll be talking about the organ systems. So, without any further business, let's get to it. Now remember, an organ system is just two or more organs that are working together to do some sort of job. We will talk about 11, and the challenge that I offered last lecture was to look at these fellows up here and there. Let's count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's supposed to be 11 organ systems. So the challenge was find out who was missing, right? And of course, for whatever reasons, this figure did not show the reproductive structures, and they did not show the skin as an organ system. So these two will be, if you add them to the 9 that are already there, will be our 11. You can kind of look back at these images when you're done, and I bet you will be able to name what system you're looking at fairly simply. What I would be trying to do if I were trying to study this is I would do something like this. If I were to name an organ in the body, could you put it into a system? And then vice versa. If I were to give you the name of one of the 11 systems, could you come up with the name of an organ or a couple organs in that system? That would be a great way to study these. Another thing you could add to it is when you talk about a system, learn, 3 functions. Learn 3 functions of that system. And then you'll have a pretty good grasp of organ system. So the name of organ, what system it belongs in, and vice versa, and 3 big functions. Let's take a look at these. All right, I see in the image lots of skin, lots of hair. So this one's pretty easy if you know the term, right? The integumentary system. I know it's a big word meaning skin, but integument, the integument, refers to some sort of wrapping, and here in a human, of course, the integument would be the skin. So major organs, the skin, hair, fingernails, toenails. Functionally, all the things that you've been told since you were a little kid, probably. Protecting the body, protecting tissues underneath it, which the word we're going to use for something that's underneath is the term deeper. Receptors, of course, something that picks up information. Receptors for pain, right? Pressure, like you can feel if you have socks on that are too tight, it will squeeze on your skin, and your skin will tell you they're too tight or whatever. If you want to know if it's hot or cold outside, you don't actually have to go outside. You can just, put your hand either up to a glass, right, window, or you just put your hand outside instead of your whole body, and the receptors inside of your hand will tell you the temperature of the air around you or some object that you're touching. Sweat glands, oil glands, all of their ducts are found within the integumentary system. And under the right conditions, it is true that the skin can and does produce a very important chemical called vitamin D. Okay, in this figure I see bones and not much else. So I see the skeleton of this fish. This is the skeletal system. And quite simply, the major organs are bones. And it's quite easy to learn that. As far as function goes, again, this one, you can probably guess the major ones, but let's go through them. Protection, protect, the vital organs underneath the ribs and so forth. Supports other organs, true indeed, it does do that. Store minerals, especially like calcium. phosphorus, and others are stored in the bones in case we need them, kind of like a bank of minerals. And if we need to withdraw some minerals for some sort of reaction, we can, take a little bit of money out of the bank, which is our skeletal system. Take too much money out of the bank and you have some issues, right? Blood cell formation. All blood cells begin their life inside of the bone marrow, which again is the substance inside of the hollow cavities found in bones. So all blood cells are formed in bone marrow. And of course we know the skeleton creates a framework. So muscles can grab onto the bones, and when the muscles contract, they can pull the bones with them and give us movement. Okay, what do we got here? Well, another pretty straightforward one. I see muscles, 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 muscles. Therefore, this must be the muscular system. And another very simple one. Major organ is muscle. Now, there are three types of muscle we'll get into at some further point, but skeletal muscle is the one you see here primarily, the muscles that pull the bones. That's why it's called skeletal muscle. There are two other types, though. Cardiac is pretty straightforward. I think it's the heart muscle, right? The muscle you find within a heart. And then there's another type called smooth muscle that you can find inside, say, your digestive tract that pushes food through you, or find it in your blood vessels, kind of pushing blood where it needs to go. So whether it's skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, or smooth muscle, the function can be boiled down to one word, and that's movement or motion. Again, it could be moving the entire body, like you getting up and walking around and doing things and driving a car and coming back. This is, what muscles do. But it allows you to make facial expressions. It allows you to sit there. If you're sitting in a chair watching a video right now, just sitting up requires a lot of muscle activity, and you don't really think about it, but it does. And then, of course, let's say you're sitting there and you get a little cold and you need to warm up a little bit. Well, you can, get up and run in place and jog and jump around a little bit, and you'll generate some heat. The ultimate example of this would be if you get too cold, your muscles may start shaking without your approval. And of course, we refer to this as shivering, but that's a way of generating heat through this system. All right, I see a brain. So I think I'm going to jump very straight into the nervous system, and I would be correct here. So major organs would include the brain, which I see mainly figured here. Right down here at the bottom where I'm putting this X, that's called the brain stem, if you will, which if we followed it down even further, it would become the spinal cord. And if we could draw a little tiny kind of figure here, if this were a brain and here's a spinal cord coming down, something like that, we could see nerves coming out from the spinal cord as it descended on the way down. Rapid response, the key there is rapid, very, very fast network of control. Receives information from inside the body and outside the body, interprets this information, sends orders to other systems, right? And says, you turn on particular muscle or you turn on particular gland. And again, some of this is done under your control, like walking around and so forth, and, powering your skeletal muscles. Some of this has to, doesn't have any of your influence whatsoever, like sweat glands. You can't consciously make yourself sweat. It's done without your permission, so to speak. The endocrine system. A lot of it involves not only major organs, but major glands. So let's talk about some of these. The thyroid gland is the one way up here in the neck. The thymus gland is different, but it's often confused for the thyroid. The thymus gland is here in the chest on top of the heart. It's not the best picture of it, but okay, fine, it's in the chest. The pineal gland we can't see, nor can we see the pituitary glands. They would be up here in the brain somewhere. We can't see them in this image. But major glands associated with the endocrine system. Organs, of course, the brain has to be there, because we know a couple of those glands are outgrowths of the brain. sexual structures overlapping here into a different system. Not just reproductive system do the ovaries and testes belong, but also here in the endocrine system. And then you can throw the pancreas in, the adrenal glands, which are not listed. What's the one word that should come to mind when you think endocrine system? Hormones, right? Hormones, hormones, hormones. So this is a very different type of control network. If the nervous system is kind of a really fast, rapid response type of control network, this is a much kind of slow and steady wins the race. So if the nervous system used, say, neurotransmitters to do its communication, the endocrine system uses hormones to do its communication. And functionally, I mean, there's so many to even name off, but it's a major regulator in growth, reproduction, sexual maturity, metabolism, and a lot of other very vital life functions. Endocrine system. Okay, here's our old friend again. Our heart and the blood vessels. This must be cardiovascular. No problem here. We're talking about the heart and the major vessels like arteries and veins. And what's the trick here between the two? Very simple. Arteries, A for A. Arteries take blood away from the heart. Veins take it toward the heart. There's going to be some structural differences, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter blue or red on a picture, although that's usually a hint. But arteries take blood away. Veins take blood back toward the heart. And of course, the heart is the pump, pushing blood to the rest of the body tissues to feed them. And so you can feed them with nutrients, you can feed them with oxygen, to keep it very simple. And you also need to get rid of that waste, that carbon dioxide, it will say here. So you can deliver all types of things. You can remove all types of things. Think of it kind of as a river system. Instead of boats delivering packages to parts of the body, you have other types of chemicals delivered to other parts of the body along the river network. Okay, another kind of strange one. Let's help you out here. I've seen this gland in the chest before. It's not thyroid because thyroid's in the neck. So that's thymus again. All right, I see the thymus gland back. I see this. It's not a kidney, but it kind of looks like one. There's two kidneys, so that's strange. There's only one there. It's not the liver, because the liver I know is on the other side we saw. That's the spleen is what that is. And then maybe the giveaway are these green nodules, nodes, called lymph nodes, right? And that is the system, the lymphatic system. Another quite strange one initially. So major organs, kind of gave it away, the spleen, the lymph nodes, and the thymus gland, if you want to clump that into an organ. So what happens is in the cardiovascular system, fluids leak out of that system. It's very common for there to be leaks. In fact, it's necessary for certain defensive functions and fluid regulation to happen. The thing is, when the fluids leak out, and this is, you see the word there, exude, when the fluids exude from the tissue, someone's got to clean up the leakage, all right? And this is what the lymphatic system is about. The spleen and the lymph nodes, that's what it's about, cleaning up, returning this fluid back to the blood. And if there happens to be any type of pathogens in there, bacteria or viruses or toxins, it will take care of that also. If you've heard of lymphocytes, again, we see that root cell, site for cell, a lymphocyte, a lymphatic cell. You may have heard of these B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Sometimes you call them just B cells and T cells. But these, of course, are defensive cells, immune cells for defense. All right, I see a couple of lungs and some bronchial tubes spanning out inside of them. This must be the respiratory system, the breathe in, breathe out system, right? So we're talking the lungs, pharynx, which is basically what we call the windpipe, but it has trachea is often called that too. It's all the same idea, but we get into the details later. And the voice box, the part of the respiratory system I'm using to create my speech sounds right now, is called the larynx. Okay, you may see a couple of terms when talking about the respiratory system. One is ventilation. This is the simple act right now of breathing in and breathing out. This is called ventilation, exchanging, volumes of air. Now, at the cellular level, if you want to actually exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide at, like, say, the capillary level, the tiniest blood vessels where this gas exchange occurs, this is known as perfusion. So you'll see these two terms, ventilation and perfusion. One is kind of a big picture, breathe in, breathe out. The other is more of a cellular level, exchanging oxygen with carbon dioxide. Okay, more guts. So it's not called the enteric system, it is called the digestive system, because that's what at least half of the system does, right? So of course we see the intestines here in this picture, primarily the small, is all this jumbled mess right here. On the sides here though, here and over here, snaking around like an S, that's the large intestine or the colon. What's not shown is the stomach or the liver or the esophagus, basically the tube in your throat where the food goes down to your stomach. Those aren't shown, but the digestive system is very large as far as the number of organs and very complicated. So not only will we physically digest food, literally chew it up, smush it up, right, rip it apart, but we'll also do some chemical digestion, meaning putting certain chemicals, usually called enzymes, that we put into the food to break it apart into even smaller and smaller pieces. Now, that's not the only thing though. You can't just digest it, break it up. You need to absorb it. So that's another major function of the digestive system, is to absorb these particles and then distribute those using the cardiovascular system to the tissues of the body that need them. Okay, so I see up here some of our old friends, they're missing their hats, right? They're missing their adrenal glands, but I see some kidneys here. If you can't see that cave, there it is. There's the two kidneys. But now I see some tubes going down. These are ureters heading down to a B, the urinary bladder down here under the line, and then the tube out of the body called the urethra. So this is the urinary system. The gross anatomy here is very simple. There's not much to it, but if you get into the microscopic anatomy and especially the physiology of the urinary system, it's quite complicated. So the kidneys, urinary bladder, again, very simple list of components. And there's only a couple more, honestly, that you could add there. Water regulation, electrolyte regulation, pH balance. These are all things that the urinary system does. Of course, we know it as, eliminating nitrogenous waste. Urine, right? We're getting urine from the body, but there are other things that it does too, besides just remove the waste. Okay, so what do I see here? Well, I see a sperm cell, and over here I see the egg cell or the ovum, and there's different terms in oocyte. There's different things that it can be called, but it looks like I'm seeing the ultimate goal of the reproductive system, right? The point is, we're using structures like testes, ovaries, and so on to not only create sex cells, like you see up here, the ovum and the sperm, but also to, produce offspring. In order to produce offspring, you have to maintain sexual maturity, you have to maintain sexual cycles. Like we've talked about before, organ systems work together, just like, a lot of things in the body work together, of course. They must have cooperation. So the 11 systems, and just for fun, you can try to name the 11 if you want to try to do it from memory. The 11 systems work together to maintain a balance with the environment. Another way to say that, every cell depends on a system. to meet its survival needs and talk about its performance of basic life functions. And we'll see more of that, this idea of balance and this idea of survival needs and basic life functions in the next talk. As always, thanks for watching. If you've got the time, check out the other videos in the series. See you next time.